Sasha.
Hi, Marilyn. Namaste,
Hi.
everybody joining us for this live chat. And I'm very excited to have Marilyn here from Tarot Clarity. And I met Marilyn through a workshop that we did with Artisan Tarot, where Marilyn, she did a wonderful presentation on tarot history through the major arcana. And I enjoyed it so very much that I knew that I had to bring Marilyn to my channel so we can geek out on Marseille together. But what you may not know about Marilyn, that she actually has been reading tarot since 1976. Can you believe that? I was so stumbled when I found out about that. So a wealth of experience. So let's all welcome Marilyn from Tarot Clarity for our weekend musings on Marseille. Hello again, Marilyn.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, and before we get into our discussion to learn more about you and your experience, can you please tell us a little bit more about your channel, the name of your channel, how you came up with the name of your channel, and the content of your channel for those people who are not familiar with Tarot Clarity? And of course, your channel is linked in the description box there for you.
Well, I think for the name for my channel, it aligns with my business name. Now, my business name is Tarot Clarity LLC. And I learned from being a business owner that you want to show up either in the very beginning of the alphabet, or you want your first name in the business to reflect what you do. So my business name, as I mentioned, is Tarot Clarity LLC. And then when it came to doing my YouTube channel, I knew it had to say Tarot Clarity, but I figured I'd personalize that a little bit more and just say Marilyn, because that's my name. So that's how that came to be. The short answer about what my channel is about is that it's primarily about, non-scenic Pip cards. I do have some videos using the Waite Coleman Smith type cards and their clones, but the majority of my videos really, because my passion is for the non-scenic Pip cards, and which include, the Italian, the French, the Swiss, the Belgian, and then also my approach to using them, which is not, the only way, and it's just one person's version. But the real answer, that's the short answer for what my YouTube channel is about. But my real answer is that my intention for my YouTube channel has always been to leave something for my descendants, for my children and grandchildren and whoever else comes after them. It's kind of a labor of love, and it's a legacy I want to leave for my descendants, for how I approach the cards and my relationship with them. And the reason I think that this is important, and the reason why I've done this, it was because I had been reading the cards for about 20 years before I even realized that my great-grandmother read tarot cards. I didn't even know it. And she read tea leaves too. And I always regretted that I had no information about her or about how she read the cards. It blew my mind that I just spontaneously and naturally began reading these cards, and that I had an ancestor who did it, and I didn't know anything about her. And I don't even know when she died. So it's a regret. So at my age, I'm 63, and I'm starting to think about my own mortality. Hopefully I have a few more years, but you start thinking about these things as you age, and it became important for me to have something to leave for my family members, particularly my children and grandchildren. And just so that when, because I know that sometimes when you're young, you don't appreciate or think to ask people, the elders in your life, questions, because you think you always will have them, right? You think you'll always have them in your life. And then one day they're gone, and especially like my granddaughters, that they say, well, oh my gosh, grandma did this, I wish we had information about her, And this way I have it. I have a whole mess of, videos. Of course, people, the public, other people who are strangers can benefit from it. But primarily my goal was to have a body of work that my own people, my family, my children, my grandchildren would have access to.
How amazing. It's just, yeah, and for them to see you as well, you know, it's not just the work that you've done, but also to see you and your passion about that. And
Yeah. So it was important for me. Now I do have a lot of videos that I keep private for that, you know, that are for them personally, but these are also like my body of work on YouTube, which is a lot, you know, is also for them. You know, it's really all for them. You know, my children, I have 3 children. They grew up, they're all in their 30s now, and they grew up with tarot in the background of their lives. You know, they're aware of, you know, what I do. But now, you know, they're like distracted by life, and they have children, and they're buying houses, and they're doing things. And so, you know, participating with me with tarot is not a priority, you know. And so I know someday they may regret that they didn't have an opportunity to really sit down with me, you know, as an adult. And that's another reason, you know, so that
yeah,
that's
because
why.
I only discovered tarot in 2015, so I was 34 then, right? But let us quickly say hello to everyone who was joining us. Justin Michael was here first, and then Maria's then joined us, and Maria is from Castellia. She's my friend as well, and Justin, and Mindy, the Artistry of Tarot. Hello to you, Titan. Nice to see you here. Dustin from Modern Metaphysics. And Dustin straight away said, I love Marilyn's channel.
Oh, thank you.
Good morning, Evie. Fairy Run Whispers, also local to my area. And we had just KSW joined us. So hello to you as well.
Hello.
Yeah, and thank you so much for sharing this, Marilyn. But like with your channel, when did you start your channel initially?
I think I started my channel in 2016, and I wasn't really sure what to do with it, you know. I mean, that was my purpose, was for leaving a body of work for my descendants, you know. But I was under the assumption at that point that most people wanted to see the Rider-Waite-Smith or the Waite-Coleman-Smith decks, you know. And I didn't really know that there would be an audience for the TDM, which is what I read. I mean, when I say TDM, I could be referencing the Tarot of Milan, Italy, as well as the French, you know, from Marseille. You know, when I say TDM, like most people, although it's referencing specifically the Tarot of Marseille style, I kind of lump in all other non-scenic Pip cards with it, you know, including the Besançon and the Belgian, and, you know. But I wasn't sure what kind of an audience there would be, you know, for that. And then I guess about maybe 2019 or 2020, I just decided I don't really want to do these. And I wasn't consistent, and I didn't do a lot of videos. I just wasn't committed to the channel quite at that point. And then finally I said, you know, can I say screw it? Screw it. I'm going to do what I want to do, right? Because that's how, you know. And then I just started doing and dedicating my channel to the non-scenic Pip decks, and that's probably only been about a year or two.
Yeah,
and,
but that's cool, right? Yeah, because then you have to, and it's so wonderful though to see, you know, because well, I discovered first RWS like probably many people, but the year after, which was 2016, towards the end of the year, Tarot de Marseille just kind of, I don't know how I discovered it even. I think I actually saw CBD tarot deck somewhere, and then I purchased it directly from Yoav Bendov just before he passed away, and the rest is history, you know. It's just kind of that sense of knowing and attachment and attraction to those decks. Yeah. A few more other people joined. Debbie Aquarius Owl, hello. And Stephen Bright is here. Hello, Stephen. It's the first time I think on my channel. The first time I think I see you here. So very welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by. Mark Estrotero, I think it's also the first time on my channel. So hello, Mark. Welcome. And Maria is saying, I'm also in my 60s, and this discussion is so very relevant. Thank you, Marilyn. Yeah, Maria, my friend from this area, she's also so very knowledgeable in tarot. Yeah. All right. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going what I didn't catch the name of the person who was in her 60s also, but yeah, there comes a point in your life where you realize that, where I realized this is my life's work, essentially. I mean, I was a teacher and I've done other things, but this essentially is my life's work. And if I want to leave a legacy for myself, this is the way I thought. I mean, probably a book too. I should get my rear in gear and write a book. But one of the things that you asked me, which was how I got into tarot. So do you want to give?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. So please do, because we want to know. I mean, you've been reading tarot since 1976. Look, you've been reading tarot for longer. I've been alive, right? So yeah, if you can just share like your journey with tarot, how it came into your life, and what were your influences when it comes to teachers and books? Because I assume those time in the 70s, it probably was like resources were not that easily accessible, and the decks that we can just go and click a button. Yes.
Well, don't laugh. Maybe Marlis, who's my age. I was first made aware of tarot in 1968, which is the first time that a deck of tarot cards was ever introduced to the United States, on television. And that was the 1JJ Swiss Tarot deck. Right. And the show that it appeared on was Dark Shadows. So, the Dark Shadows show that I'm referring to was the old one from the 60s, which was really campy. It was like a gothic serial soap opera, about the lives of vampires and witches, and the stars of that show were Jonathan Frid and Grayson Hall, who I think were like theatrical actors, and I think Joan Bennett was in it, and a couple other names that maybe I can't. Catherine Grayson. Oh, I can't remember. No, I'm confusing names, but there were a lot of people who were in that, in that show. And although in retrospect, it was very campy. When you're 10 years old, it was very like cool, And in one particular episode, Grayson Hall was portraying a character from early in Barnabas Collins, who was the vampire in the show, life, which gave us a kind of backstory, like an origin story to how he became a vampire. And in this episode, Grayson Hall was portraying a kind of fortune teller character from the Caribbean islands, who was a kind of personal chaperone for Josette, who was his love interest. And the fortune teller laid cards out for Barnabas, foretelling that there was trouble for him in the upcoming months. Now, the 4 cards that were drawn were the Death card, the Tower, and what we call the Magician nowadays, and the High Priestess in modern decks. But in this particular deck, it was Juno, because the deck itself was the 1JJ Swiss Besançon, right? So they were beautiful cards, and for the split second or however long the TV showed these cards on the table, I never knew there was such a device that could be used for fortune telling. Now I don't think of the cards in terms of fortune telling anymore. But when I was 10, I thought, oh my God, this is so cool. And then the cards themselves were really beautiful. And years later, like there were 7 years later, I was at a shopping mall, and I went into a novelty shop that, that sold kind of strange things. And I saw the exact same deck. I saw the exact same deck that had been on the TV show. And I remembered the deck. I remembered what the cards looked like. For whatever reason, it imprinted on my brain, and I remembered them, And I had gone to the mall to buy a record album. I was like 16, going to be 17. So for me to like abandon abort that mission to buy an album and buy tarot cards instead was really something, So I bought the tarot cards because I had to have them. Now, by that time, when I was 16 going on 17, I was entering, my life was on a trajectory to go to a professional art school, because I went to Tyler School of Art, a professional art school in Philadelphia. So by then I wasn't, like the 10-year-old little girl that I was like thinking about fortune telling, but I was really attracted to the cards for their artistic merit and qualities, So, I kind of, I just became more attracted to the cards, because of their art, the value that they had artistically. And I began a personal quest to understand them as much as I could. Growing up in suburban Philadelphia in the 60s and 70s isn't the same as maybe someone growing up in Europe, where history has a richer presence. Because as I said, no one in America, even very few people. Yeah, I mean, they weren't on the television. You just never saw them. They were never around until like the late 60s, early 70s. So there was not a lot of information, And then once the Rider-Waite-Smith, in those days it was called Rider-Waite-Smith, once the Waite-Coleman-Smith deck came out, then the only information you could get in the States was about the Waite-Coleman-Smith deck. So there wasn't really anything about this deck that I had, So I had to learn about it, going through rabbit holes of my own, like trying to learn about numerology, because what were on the cards, right? All I knew what was on the cards, and so what was on the cards were numbers and suits. And then the trump cards, were very specific, the Fool plus 21 cards had very specific concepts, So my way of learning and the books that I got in those days weren't tarot books, because the books that I was finding didn't match what I had,
I would think like tarot books would have been only translated later on, right? Because, well, even with Rider-Waite-Smith, like, yeah, we had a book, but those people, they were educated, right? And they had access to that French and Italian literature when it comes to tarot or tarot, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch what you were saying.
Yeah, no, I was saying that when it comes to Pip decks, right,
Yes.
Swiss, that at that time, those books on Tarot de Marseille, Pip decks, they haven't been translated yet. And
Yes.
Rider-Waite-Smith pack became very popular because, well, the Upper Waite, Golden Dawn, they were educated people. They could speak and translate French and Italian, and they actually used quite a lot of influence from the books they translated for themselves.
Yes, but I didn't have access to any of that, And although at the time I spoke, I guess, I spoke Spanish well enough to be this shy of being fluent, because I did live in Spain as a girl. My father's ancestry was Spanish, but I didn't speak Italian and I didn't speak French, So, the way I learned tarot, I wanted to learn how to use them. I didn't know anybody in my life who knew how. There was nobody in my world who could read them. So the rabbit holes I went down to teach myself were not about tarot, but about numerology and about medieval. And, at that point too, a little later, after finding this deck in a store, while I was an art student, I made a trip to New York, where I saw a few of the Visconti cards on display in a New York museum. And for the life of me, I don't remember what museum it was, but then I saw these cards, but they were older and they were Italian. So then I knew, and then I asked about them to the docent, and who explained that they were like really, really old, from the 1400s, and they were from this family called Visconti. And I was like, oh my God, like, wow. And then that gave me enough information to like look them up, and to try to go to the better libraries, because the Barnes and Noble or whatever was the bookstore. It didn't have stuff like that, So then it, and because I was an art student, then I just immersed myself in medieval and Renaissance Italian art. And then I started learning that way. So it wasn't like that. I learned tarot because I was reading books about tarot. It was more I was learning about tarot because of the only way I knew how to learn about these cards was to learn about maybe the imagery or what it was like in those days, and the numerology and stuff like that.
But it's fascinating way, because you use the culture of that time that you could research as well, right? The art and the culture and the history of the culture and the art, and you yourself like brought it into your reading.
But the way that I taught myself and learned is different than had I learned like about these cards had I grown up in Europe, right? Because they had like maybe they had a traditional way, or they had a greater understanding of what to do with these cards and how to read them. Mine was more like baptism by fire, and I had to figure out a way. And so my approach, is probably not, the same if I had like the benefit of being in Europe, although since that time, I've learned, there are many good, tarot books that have been put out, and I've benefit greatly, and, in the years that they've been out, like since the 90s or the 2000s, but I still kind of like stick to, I learned a lot, after, like people like Paul Hewson, Michael Dummett, Ronald Decker, just like, Gertrude Moakley, Helen Farley, so after I became aware of them, I was eager to read what they had to say, but, and then I learned, ideas of like, reading with like directions and pattern, which I then incorporated into the way I already was reading. But, and I guess for me, because the cards have images on them, the 21 cards and the Fool, they're very specific what they are and what they mean. Right. So I kind of felt like it was my business to learn what they were and what they meant and where they came from as much as I could. And then the number cards, I just came up with my own system for that. And so I guess in a way it was kind of organic, but but I know that it's not, it's probably also a little unconventional. So I don't know, because sometimes people will comment on my channel that, oh, I love how you read the cards. It's not how I do it, but I like your approach, so I know, like from other people, it's not how they do it.
Yeah. But it's wonderful though, and but that's the thing. Like you see, like as I mentioned on my channel, when it comes to anything, like what we like, what we favor in cards, in food, in anything, and like in our practices, it's all individual. It's an individual journey, and it's very unique to us.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and it's wonderful, and thank you so much for sharing. It's just amazing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight Justin's comment here. I love Marilyn's channel. She's been a
thank you. Is that Justin? Thank you, Justin. Yes, yes. We're both from Philly.
Yeah. And hello, Kenzie is getting a bit late there in the UK for Kenzie, but thank you so much for stopping by. Kristen Louise, hello to you, lovely. And KSW says, also from New Jersey, Jersey girl. Okay. And I think
I'm from Mays Landing, South Jersey.
Nice, yeah.
Where's this young lady from? Or KSW? Where are you from, KSW?
Yeah, I'm just saying New Jersey for now. But good morning to Liam. Well, Liam, hello.
Hello.
And yeah, KSW loves your channel as well. I'm just scrolling if you have any questions, but yeah, we didn't have any questions. So
now
sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Well, the Visconti deck that I saw in the museum in New York, that became the deck that I kept looking for, because I only had the Best in Song, the 1JJ Swiss, but I knew there was an old deck, the Visconti, and I kept looking for that, and I just could never find it until I think like 1990 or 1995 or something like that, when Los Scarabeo came out with one of their, versions. I mean, that was the first deck, the first copy of the Los Scarabeo that I could ever find, where I lived. And so that became like, so that and the Best in Song were my two decks, and they were very different. They're separated in time by 400 years. Right? Because the 1JJ Swiss was like from the 1830s, and the Visconti was like from the 1450s or whatever, right? So they were separated by a long time.
Do you still have your first 1JJ?
Oh, I sure do. It's behind me. You want me to grab it or not really?
Oh, well, it's up to you, but people quite familiar. I actually recently got a vintage copy of one JJ Swiss. Was very lucky in plastic. I just couldn't believe that that deck was sealed in plastic longer than I was alive. But of course,
Yeah.
I opened like
Yeah.
one
I
of those.
still have that deck. I still
Mm,
have it. I
yeah.
sure do. Yeah. It's a sentimental favorite, you know. I mean, I
Mm,
guess if the house were on fire or whatever, you know, I have a few hundred decks, you know, and so I have some valuable decks that, you know, maybe I would grab on the way out of the house, you know, because they would be impossible to replace or very hard to replace. But my sentimental cards, you know, are like the one JJ Swiss,
yeah,
you
but
know.
they're hard to replace though because the new copy, the cardstock is different. They put English
Yeah,
type.
that's
You
true.
know, that's the
And
thing.
they're in
Like,
English. They're not, you can't always get it in French.
yeah, and I think they actually even put pentacles instead of coins, and that was my
No,
pet peeve.
they did
Yeah,
that
and
for
that's
one
why.
JJ Swiss? No, they didn't.
Yeah, in the modern one. Yeah, that's why I was on the lookout for the vintage one because I just couldn't deal with that. I can deal with
Uh,
English titles, but do not. I think it
oh,
was that. Mindy probably will.
oh
Mindy is not.
yeah, no, I can't deal with that either. Oh, she's
I
up from
know.
Brick Township. Yeah,
Yeah,
I couldn't deal with it either. So I'm glad I have it because mine was in French because that's
yeah,
how it
well,
was
that's the
released.
vintage copy I got from the 70s. Yeah. Stephen Bright is saying, I think there is a strong movement towards unconventional reading these days, which I think is liberating.
Uh,
Yeah, I
it
do too.
is. And
Mm.
you know, that's a great point. And reading with non-scenic pips is very liberating because you're not, you know, it went like when you pull the three of swords of the Wait Coleman Smith deck, you know, you can't, you know, that's all they say, you know, like that, you know, you're right that you can't have any other meaning for that card except for that, you know, and because, you know, and it can mean so many other things, you know, at
Mm.
least the way I understand the cards, you know. So um, you know, reading from, you know, non-scenic pip decks is very liberating because you have greater possibilities for what the cards could mean.
Mm. And you look at them with the relationship to each other without a preconceived idea that this heart is built by the swords. Because when you see it, right? Like, how can you unsee it and not interpret it?
Yes.
So it kind
Yeah.
of brings, yeah. And Mindy was saying that she loves her one JJ Swiss.
Yeah, I do too. And you know, the Juno and Jupiter cards, I guess they kind of throw some people, but I don't really think that I don't think they're a bad substitute for the female pope and the pope. Um, you know, the lecture I gave at Artists Tarot touches on the idea of the possibility, not necessarily the absolute truth, but the possibility that the female pope might have been Pope Joan. And it's kind of uncanny that Juno, you know, kind of sounds a lot like Joan, right?
Mm.
So, you know, you wonder, like in the attempt or the effort to take away the religious figureheads, the female pope and the pope, you know, you wonder if like Juno really wasn't kind of like a thinly veiled reference to Pope Joan anyway, because
Mm.
the name is very similar. And Jupiter is not a bit, you know, he was like the god of, you know, the big god, right? So he's not such a terrible replacement for the Pope, I don't think. So, you know,
Mm,
whenever I see
I
Juno and the Jupiter and Besançon decks, I mean, maybe, you know, the interpretation is maybe a little bit different, but not by much, you know.
Mm.
So I think they're reasonable substitutes.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah. Yeah, for Justin, it feels more Italian. I think he was saying that one JJ Swiss more feels more Italian than French.
Yeah, it does. I mean, and
Well, for me, the moon cards, it's supposed to be like Romeo and Juliet, but
yeah. Well, yeah, because by then, you know, I mean, obviously, you know, although the earliest Italian decks didn't look like the French decks, but they started to, you know, and you know, so who knows if like, you know, there is no concrete evidence where the style of Tarot of Marseille originated. I mean, the carry sheet, you know, was found in Italy, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't wasn't begun elsewhere, or doesn't disprove that it came out of Italy either, So I think they started to, appreciate the art and the artistry of different countries, and I don't think it's unusual that the one JJ Swiss would kind of look Italian, because, everybody had the Superfino as a reference, and that was a beautiful deck. A beautiful Italian deck, which came out around the same time as the one JJ Swift. I think the Superfino was 1830 as well. I think I could be wrong. Maybe it was later. But if they're contemporary, yeah, I can get my deck, but I have to leave the space for a second to get it. Do you want me to, or no? It's not that important.
It's up to people. If you want, yeah, I don't know, like people in the chat, just let us know if you want to check the date and see the cards. Because Justin is saying that Kerry Shit could be from Avignon or Lyon, which is in France, according to Ross.
Yeah.
Of course, Ross is the historian. Yeah. And Mark is saying, one JJ Smith was my first deck too. Unlike Marilyn, I took the easy way out and switched to RWS for decades. About 3 months ago, when I finally taught myself to read TDM, never going back. Yeah. Good morning, Jan, One Science to Soul Terra. Well, I'm saying morning because Jan is in Australia. So, yeah. All right. So, yeah, wouldn't it be correct to say then, Marilyn, that Visconti was the first deck that sparked your interest in the history of tarot?
I guess, I mean, I was already like hooked with the one JJ Swiss, but once I saw the Visconti in the museum, and then I knew there was, I had, I knew I had access to Italian medieval art and Renaissance art in my, where I went to university, So I think that's when I finally thought, oh, I can find out about this through my college, where I went to university, whereas I didn't quite feel, I was attracted to the one JJ Swiss artistically, and I thought they were beautiful, but it wasn't until I saw the Visconti that I really understood that I had access, to the origins of these cards, through, research and, in my art school. Yeah. So,
yeah, I'm the same. I love to go, like anything I study, regardless of the subject, going to the sources and the origins is important to me as well.
Yeah, it's just, I became kind of like an obsession, It sort of it just became, like it was just something that really interested me, and not a lot of people knew about it that I knew of, and so it just became something that I wanted to learn. And the only way I could learn it is if I tried myself, because there weren't, no one was giving me the information. I had to really dig for it. I had to really want it, And, it became like a major part of my life, I mean, I was attracted to the cards for their beauty, and then, my 10-year-old self was attracted to them for the mystery and like, ooh, like, what is this device, this magical thing? And I was just compelled to use them. And, being that they were a visual device, it became very seductive for me because, visual arts is, I'm a visual learner, and, that I, I was an art teacher, after college, I was an art teacher.
Yeah, and that brings me to the next question. When we talk about tarot, what is tarot to you, and why do you think it's played
yeah
part in your life?
I guess just like what I said, because it fit into my life, because I was a visual person, I was a visual learner, I became an art teacher, and it was a visual device, plus I already, I was already the kind of person who I was always interested in the metaphysical, or that there's more to the universe and the world than what we see with our eyes. So it kind of like sucked me in both of those realms, the metaphysical world as well as the visual arts, and it was just like a perfect topic for me personally to participate in. because it helped, like, because I started, the more you do it, the more you understand, the more you connect with the cards. We all have our own process, right? Where we kind of go into, at least I do, I can't speak for all people, but I kind of go into a mental place. It could take me 10 minutes before I'm ready to lay the cards, because I go through this process. And, the cards are a way to connect, the beautiful visual aspects of cards, which I love art. So, that works for me, as well as tapping into something that's above and beyond who I am, and, I think that it just means a lot to me, because the tarot just taps into those realms, both realms, the practical world of physical beauty as well as the unknown. So for me, it's been my tool my whole life, and I guess that's the answer that I would come up with.
Dustin is saying that he also loves his vintage edition of one JJ Swiss. Yeah, many of us do as well, Dustin, and we're just so fortunate that, I don't know now, but a few months back is actually you could get those vintage decks reasonably priced, kind of at the price of whatever US games decks go for now. Maybe a little bit pricey.
They're getting kind of expensive though, because now they're getting to be like 50 years old, And
I was really lucky. Like, I mean, I can't even say the price, because I was just the person was the same. I think my assumption, lots of like little vintage and antique things, and I think it was the inheritance, and they just listed this pack of cards sealed, and I'm like, snapped it.
Do you want to scream? This is going to make some of you guys scream. You know what we pay for tarot decks. I mean, if we get like a mass-produced deck, maybe we can get it for under $30. But most of the time, even mass-produced decks are $30. And you get into the art decks and the more, quality decks, you're talking $80, excess of $100. You're talking, it's an investment to get nice decks. But I had been looking at the box for my 1JJ Swiss recently, and I never took off the sticker price from when I bought it. And I fainted. And I've taken that deck out a million times, and I never really paid attention to the sticker that was on it. I just never, $2, $2. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, like, wow.
That's the version with this delicious buttery cardstock, the 2-part box.
And I could buy an album, because that day I was going to go to the mall to buy an album. So those $2 were going to go toward an album, So, it was even like I spent my money on the deck instead of an album. So I could have even gotten maybe an album for a couple more dollars, So it was like crazy. $2 for a tarot deck. Oh my God.
But boy, how more valuable it was than an album would have been for you.
Yeah, well, that's how long ago it was.
No, but I'm saying is that the deck, like, it's so good that you decided that the deck attracted you so much from the memory from the movie that you saw, that it's kind of pretty much influenced how your life and your visual experience and reading went, right? It was one deck. How amazing is that?
I should give acknowledged the Live and Let Die movie, the James Bond film in 1973, because that also had a tarot deck, and but that was the Fergus Hall tarot deck that some people may be familiar with. That was created just for that movie, but that was like another tarot deck that was presented to the world, and probably to the American population, it was maybe like the second or third tarot deck they'd ever seen, because like I said, we weren't really seeing tarot decks, but once the Waite Coleman Smith deck, or in those days it was the Rider Waite Smith deck, once that deck came over, then that was like the market was just over full, of that, and that was all we saw, so it was hard, it was hard to do anything with the non-scenic pips.
Yeah. Mindy's saying, and then here it is 30 plus years later and still being used. That was a great $2 investment.
Yeah.
About 45 plus years, my friend.
Yeah, that was a great investment. because it became my, even though I had done other things in my life and I had children and, I was a teacher and all that, it was just something that stayed with me for my, and it will stay with me. It'll be the thing that I take into my old age, which I'm already there, but,
Wow.
I'll continue, with it. And
Yeah.
it's important to me to, pass down this practice, to my grandchildren. I have 2 grandbabies who are infants right now. Well, one's like a year and a half and the other's like 3 months old.
I saw the picture of the baby on your Instagram.
So they're
Also.
too little. They're too little. But I brought one into my tarot parlor the other day, So
Yeah,
I brought her in. I was like, "Ooh, this is Grandma's tarot parlor," So I just hope I live long enough.
Way of the space, young,
Yeah.
It's
I hope I
not.
live long enough to be able to like really, but if not, then I do have these videos on my YouTube channel.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. And you probably see it on your channel. So people, your viewers, subscribers who watch your channel, and like many of my friends as well, and people I know in the community, they started, I myself started with RWS, and quite a few of us experience challenges when it comes to transitioning from illustrated pips into non-illustrated pips, right? So what piece of advice, like many of us in the chat as well, because we love Tarot de Marseille, that's why we're here, we find it liberating, but what advice would you give to novices to Tarot de Marseille and Italian pip decks coming from experience with illustrated decks?
Well, that I can't speak on that because I personally am not coming from Rider-Waite-Smith. I've always been Pip, the Pip style. I mean, I have probably 100 decks in the Rider-Waite tradition or the Waite-Coleman-Smith tradition, and their clones. So, in the 90s, when I would go to the store, I would pick up a tarot deck, and most of the time it was like one of those, But, some people say they have trouble adjusting from Rider-Waite-Smith to the Marseille, but my problem was from the Marseille to the Waite-Coleman-Smith. I had the opposite, because I was already like, I was already, coming from a different direction. But as far as like learning the non-scenic pip cards, I think my answer is probably going to be unpopular, but I'd say, I mentioned it before, the images of the 21 cards and the Fool card, they're specific concepts, right? There's specific ideas. And I don't think there's any way around not knowing what they mean, because if it was irrelevant, then they wouldn't be specific. You know what I mean? Like, they aren't random images, I think the discipline in learning these cards is to know what they mean or to know what their sources were as much as you can. We can't know every origin story for every card. It's just not even, it's ridiculous to suggest there is, but you can kind of try, and you can, get close. And then as far as the pip cards go, I think what you have to do is, the pips meaning like ace through 10, and then the courts is, find a way to reconcile number with suit. And that's how I do it. I know there are other people who do it differently. And not just that way, but look at patterns. Sometimes, you can know what the meanings of the cards are, but sometimes I'll be struck by a pattern more than by what the cards might mean. Right. And so it'll, so if the question is relevant, if the question is being asked, is relevant to a pattern I see, then forget what I can include what the meanings are or what my understanding is. And I probably will include those meanings in it, but I'll be more, I'll also be struck by the patterns, and then, so I guess, be open to a few different ways, like, it's a visual thing. So, I think it's valid, of course, to respond to patterns and to notice directionality, absolutely, But then I think it's also important, even if you disregard it, to have an understanding and a knowledge of what they mean, you know, because they do mean something.
Yeah, and you see, like the way I feel, even like in good books, like well, open reading of Bendov, right? But does provide like meanings for the cards. And my thing is, I like to see the meanings as functions because they're kind of in a way meanings. If you look at the card, like the poet, right? The function of the card, what is his job, what does he do, and also basing it on the history and cultural reference. And that's what creates really a meaning, because if you read good Tarot de Marseille books, right, the meanings are actually describing exactly what we see in the cards and what we know culturally, but also from our culture, we can add extra layering as well from how we see it from the perspective of our culture. Yeah, and I love that you said patterns, because we can know, and it's probably essential to know the basics, right? But yet we need to have that freedom to be able to see actually what jumps out for us in little flower expanding, and
Yes. Yes,
density.
that's valid also, of course. One book I failed to mention, especially if people are looking for TDM, you know, Tarot Marseille. And I think the J.M. David book on the reading the Marseille Tarot. I think that's if you're, you know, interested in the French decks, you know, and you're interested in Tarot of Marseille specifically, that's also a great resource. And I wish I had that deck 30, 40, 50, you know, 45 years ago, but I didn't, you know.
I love that book. It's a big tome,
Yeah.
right? And it features
Yeah.
Jean Noblet. So for those of you who love Jean Noblet, that's like, it's a really
Yeah.
and it's like, I think it's like 30 weeks or a year type of course that he introduces. So you kind of, it's pretty much like self-paced Tarot de Marseille study. It's a
Yes, you can do it at your own pace, you know, and that's although I tend to read books from you know, cover to cover. That's a book that I've, like, through the years I've opened up and, you know, read this here and that there, and then, you know, eventually I read the whole book, you know, but not necessarily in the order it was written. But it's a great resource. You know, I know it's a kind of an expensive book and it's a big book, but I think it's, if you're serious, you know, about learning, it's a good.
Yeah, but if you kind of look at, you know, like 6 months, a year course for Tarot de Marseille to pay for, right? The book kind of becomes like not that expensive, really. Kind of a price of 2 books. If you look at,
It's really, it's, you know, it's like the price of a tarot deck, a good, you know, good quality tarot deck, you know. But you know, some people, it all depends on your level of, I don't want to say commitment, but your level of interest and how far you want to be, you know. And sometimes people just want to have nice decks, you know, or they, you know, play around with it for themselves and their friends or whatever. But I think if you, like, really want to make it like your legacy, or if you're thinking in terms of really grasping these cards at a cellular level, then, you know, some of these books on the history are really important. And J.M. David, you know, is one of those books, especially if you're, you know, interested in the Tarot of Marseille. And that book focuses specifically on the Noblet, but you know, you could use it in general for other TDM decks. I mean, and he references other TDM decks. He references Conver and other decks, you know.
yeah. And talking about books, which other books would we recommend for people who want to learn to read Pip decks or Tarot de Marseille? I know you made a video recently, but probably not everybody saw the video. So if you can just mention your recommendation.
Well, history, as far as history goes, I think Paul Hewson, like, for me, really appeals to me. I like reading Paul Hewson books, Huson. And I think Helen Farley, I think that's her first name. I don't have her. I have to go through my bookshelf to find it, but I think her name is Helen Farley. And Untold Tarot by Caitlin Matthews is very popular, and I think that's a good resource, you know, for seeing the cards in action, because she, you know, J.M. David will tell you about the, you know, maybe the origins of the cards and the history of the cards, but, you know, Caitlin Matthews puts them in action, and so you can, you know, and you may not always agree with her interpretations, you know, but she shows you how she got there, and I think that's, you know, helpful. and off the top of my head, and and whenever there's a deck that comes out, if the creator has a book that goes with it, buy it, like the Noble deck, by Fleur Noir, buy it, anything you can get particular to that particular deck could be helpful, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and talking about Caitlin, because she's actually doing a workshop, well, in my time, it's tomorrow, 5 o'clock in the morning, but I think it's 11 o'clock Pacific time. She's doing a workshop on the Pips of Tarot de Marseille, so Northwest Tarot Symposium, I think. Yeah, so I'm booked in for this one. It's early morning for me tomorrow. Yeah. And yeah, so do you mind doing a little demonstration reading for us, Marilyn? Just kind of
Sure.
3 cards just to show, give a little taste, I guess, how you do readings, because you read professionally. And I will link after the chat your website as well, if people want to do a reading, book a reading with you.
Yeah, so I didn't come up with a, demonstration question, but questions that I really enjoy doing are like tapping into things that aren't like, will he come back to me kind of stuff, or, I'm more attracted to do, I think you attract the kind of people that, you want to read for, and so the kind of readings I enjoy doing are readings about, like, is my house haunted? I think I did a recent one like that on my YouTube channel. Or sometimes people want closure, or not. I hate that word. I don't like the word closure, but sometimes people have unfinished business with somebody who passed on, and as a way to comfort themselves, sometimes they'll come and they'll ask me a question about that person, like, is there anything that I need to understand about how we left things off when that person died, especially if it wasn't good. Excuse me, I dropped the card. So those are the kinds of questions I really enjoy reading. So is that okay? Is that kind of a question okay for a demonstration?
Oh, it's perfect for me. Yeah.
Okay. So let's say somebody passed away and there's unfinished words, or maybe they weren't on the best of terms, right? And the person's like distressed. The person who comes to me is distressed, and they just want to know. They want a way to relieve their pain, right? They want to heal, because tarot is about healing, right? Okay, so assuming that I go into this place, and I'm not going to go into it here, but I would, concentrate and meditate and go into the place where I go, asking the universe for the most meaningful reading that I can give this person, to give them, a healing, So assuming I did all that, and then I would pull the cards. So the first card, the Eight of Swords, right? So that kind of shows a lot of tension. 8 is a high number of the suit of swords. So, it fits in with, what they were saying about, like, they didn't die, when the friend died or the person died, they weren't on the best of terms. So that could show some tension, right? Although, 8, I wouldn't go so far as to say that 8 is a perfect number, but it is a number of order. And so I think I probably have to see the next cards, to see how this will really fit in. But for the moment, I'm just seeing, there's tension. I see the tension there between you. Oh, man. Of course, I must not have shuffled this deck very well. And then we have another card of tension, right? So then we have the 9, but then we see a breakthrough. We see that the sword is kind of breaking through. So maybe it could be the relief of tension, because 9 is a perfect number, 3, 6, and 9 are what I consider perfect numbers, right? And so, there's tension, but it's coming to a head, and maybe it'll break. And, maybe it's okay at this point for you to forgive yourself, or to let go of it and start over in your mind, maybe remember other things that are better. And, the Queen of Swords, another sword card. Yeah, probably didn't shuffle this deck very well. Let me see. But the next few cards aren't swords, so so I guess it was just a sword. It was just a sword kind of reading, I guess. And the Queen of Swords is somebody who takes charge, takes responsibility, and has what it takes to get past this thing. So I think it's I think in a strange way, I might say that I think it's okay to forgive yourself, and I think that that's the message that is coming through is to let go of it, because it's time. 8 and 9 are high numbers. 9 is like you're going to start over at 10, so it's time to start with a fresh thing and take control of your emotions better. Now, another thing that I do, and it's just the thing that I do, it doesn't make it right, and this is probably, even though I don't subscribe to occultist cards, right? But I think I don't know where I learned this, but I learned it sometime like in the in the 90s probably, where I add up the card. I think maybe it was Oswald Wirth. I don't know exactly where I picked up on it, but to get the quintessential, so I add the numbers, right? So then we have like the 8 and the 9. And that's 17. And so that would give me the star card, and so that would be the message overall. And in addition to these cards, and the star card is like, well, that's a card of hope. And that's a card of, you could say, healing and letting, that's how I would apply it to that question,
And I think it's actually a very French way to do it. I read somewhere. I know Camellia Alias does it as well.
Oh, yeah.
The major readings, with the major.
So she adds. Is that a woman? That's a woman, right? Camellia
Alias.
Yeah.
She's one
so
of
she adds them up, and then she does the. I didn't even know.
But readings, but in some of the spreads, like she does the French draw, so 5-card spread.
Yes. That's probably where I learned. Okay, that's probably where I thought of it,
that's
because
the synthesis, right? That's the message.
Yes. So when I learned the Tirage and Qua, that's probably exactly where I picked it up. That's exactly where I picked it up. And then I started thinking, well, why don't do it like for other, So then whenever I do, I'm looking for the star card right now just to add it to because I'm kind of neurotic.
And now you said that you may not have shuffled the cards well. I don't know if Stephen is still here, Stephen Bright. I think on his yesterday or a few days ago post on Instagram, he was saying about there's not like wrong way to shuffle the cards, and even if you feel like we haven't shuffled them enough, still you get the message that, the cards.
That's the message. And I think I did, because after I said that, I looked in the cards and there were no more swords, so that was just the 3 that came up. But like the star card, you navigate at night to find your way with the cards, the star, you find your way using stars at night, when in the darkness, when you're lost and lonely and scared, and also if you think of like the constellation of Aquarius, it has a different meaning, where she's irrigating the land, because that's when the constellation of Aquarius appears in the sky, is when the rains come. And so you have an opportunity to irrigate the land with water, which I think is where this image comes from, I think. But at any rate,
looking at the cards, it's like relief, right?
Yeah, right. So it's kind of like, you'll find your way, but you have to recognize yourself that it's time to let it go. And the message is, from the person, is that it's time, and to let it go and take control and allow yourself to find your way out of that sadness. I think the cards, like for me, I just like helping people, and more than saying, oh yes, so and so is running off with your best friend, you know what I mean. I think it's, I much prefer readings like this, where like you give somebody food for thought and a way to move on from a challenging circumstance or something they're suffering. Is hard to move on. And I think it's also fun to do card. A lot of people think they live in a haunted house, and so they'll come and they'll say, what's in my house, and those are fun too. Now there's no way to really, I guess, verify those unless you can dig and get history, and and sometimes people do that, but it's sometimes fun to do readings like that. The longer you do the cards, the longer you have a relationship with them, to make it interesting, you have to want to keep doing it for 50 years or 46 years or however heck long I've been doing it, is you have to find new challenges, or more interesting and meaningful ways to apply the cards. Like if I had to do, like, is my boyfriend coming back for 50 years, I'd shoot myself. I couldn't do it, so then I find the niche of people who kind of like the kind of readings I do, and they tend to be a little out there.
Yeah. No, I think with the universe, we attract who we are or who we want to be, right? What we
I think so too.
So this is what we need to learn, right? Yeah. Just want to say a quick hello to Lucy from Australia and Gigi. Hello, Gigi. And goodbye to Justin. I think he has to drive back home from work. Right. So thank you so much for doing this demonstration, Marilyn. And now, you have your noble question about decks. I don't know if it's going to be included, but the question I like to ask everyone who comes as a guest onto my channel, and we know about your first tarot deck, right? It was one JJ Swiss, but what was your most recent one acquisition? And what's your forever? The decks that you don't see yourself, or the deck or the decks you don't see yourself without.
When I originally thought of the question, I thought what would be the deck that I really wished I had, and that would be the deck that my great grandmother had. But who knows what it was? I don't know. It was she was European, so it was probably a TDM. I guess my most recent deck that came to me just arrived in the mail 2 days ago, and it's an advanced copy of a deck by the the people over at Artists and Tarot. I don't know am I even allowed to mention what it is? I guess it's probably. I can mention it. I'm not allowed to show it until November, but I can mention it. And that they're coming out with a Noble tarot deck, and they gave me an advanced copy. So that's one. The most recent one I bought. Oh man. I'm not sure, it probably wasn't even that long ago, but I don't know. And my forever deck, oh man, I don't know. My workhorse decks aren't necessarily the ones that have the most value. My workhorse decks or my sentimental decks or the decks that are easy to put in my handbag. I guess it would be an Italian deck, a deck I use an awful lot is the Ancient Italian by Lo Scarabeo, and I think you can get this for well under $30 on Amazon. It's not an expensive deck.
It's so beautiful.
It is. It's a beautiful deck, and I'm not afraid of losing it because I can replace it easily. But my other, beautiful decks and very valuable decks are harder to replace. So in a way, I guess those are my favorite, because I would grab them before I'd grab this if the house was burning, But I shouldn't say if my house was burning, because I would like to think that if my house was burning, I just get out and not worry about tarot decks, but I probably still would think about it,
Well, I have a little to-go tarot bag. I'm prepared,
I told my husband, I said, we should have a suitcase handy by my tarot parlor so that, God forbid, if we ever had to get out of the house quick, I just throw them all into the suitcase and get out.
We'll get the tools.
I guess it would be one of my El Meneghellos or my Giordano Berti decks, probably be. So they would probably be Italian, would be the ones that would be my aesthetically most pleasing to me. But I do like the brevity of TDM. I do like, I really do like Tarot of Marseille style very much. So I guess the Noble would be my favorite TDM because it's small, it's petite. I can put a lot of cards on the table. I don't need a huge space for it.
Yeah, I would say that's my too, and probably because it's arguably, but it's the first complete sort of. They had to restore a few pips, but Tarot de Marseille, yeah. Just a quick.
Did I answer your question? I'm not sure if I did.
Yeah, I think you did. Yeah, you did just fine. I'm the same. I have so many decks. I just like to ask people.
I have so many. My most valuable aren't necessarily the ones that I carry. They're not the ones I carry around with me. They're just the ones I use in my parlor.
Yeah. And that's for me probably Noblaze, because I've got like some more precious Noblaze by Agnes Kapler, which is like handcrafted, right?
Yeah.
Handmade. But like Lenoir, I have quite a few copies of the one that you showed, and that's where I can kind of really be not that precious about, not like I don't value it, I do, but I can carry it with me, no problem. Yeah, just quick hello to some other people who came over, and earlier on I did see, now I scrolled up, Soul, hello to you, and Occult Compass, hello to you as well. Welcome to our chat. And Kay, hello Kay. And I think I didn't miss anyone. I think I did say hello. If I didn't, please, like my moderators, and Sadhana as well. Hello Sadhana. Namaste. Yeah, so if I didn't say hello, please moderators let me know so we can say hello to everyone. Right, so now Marilyn, outside of tarot, do you practice any other
I
forms
do.
of cartomancy?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I just roll dice, if I just need, sometimes I just roll dice and see the number, However, one thing that I do use a lot, especially when I have to get to the truth of something that is in me, like I kind of believe like I know the truth, and it's only something I used for myself, and that's a pendulum, because, and I don't think I could do it for someone else. I think, the pendulum for me has become a way of, I think I know the answer for something, but I'm persuaded, or I'm distracted, or I'm listening, I'm influenced by other people. And I really sometimes just want to know, what do you really feel, And recently, like 2 years ago, it was discovered that I had a brain aneurysm. My sister had three brain aneurysms blow up in her head at the same time. It was devastating. And I got tested, because it was like a genetic thing. And it turns out that I had one too, So I was faced with having corrective brain surgery to fix it, or to just follow it for the rest of my life and just like deal with it until it gets to be a problem and then go fix it. But the problem with that is that it could explode at any time and there's no way of knowing. So it might sound like a no-brainer to say, get the damn surgery, just do it, right? But the surgery has risks, I mean, you could die in the course of the surgery. So, you could end up dying sooner from the surgery than you would have if you just took your chances and let the thing play out, And I had listened to a lot of different people, and people telling me yes and no. And, and I really wanted to know what I felt, what do I really, really, really want? So I used the pendulum, and I established, there's a process to learn how to use the pendulum, but you establish ahead of time, and you do a couple tests about, this means yes, swaying this way means yes, or whatever, swaying this way means no, or whatever. So I did it, and it came out to have the surgery, So I had the surgery, and as it turns out, I still need more surgery, but it helped me make that decision, and I think it was the right decision, because you don't really want to live for the rest of your life thinking that your head's going to explode, So so the pendulum is something, and I think it was very helpful, more than the tarot cards, because I was so close to that problem. I was so close to that thing that no matter, like, I could make the cards say whatever I wanted them to say consciously, I think, because I was too close to it. It's not like I was being objective. I was talking about my own life here, and I just felt like I needed a way to tap into my unconscious completely, or my subconscious completely, to know the answer. And that's why I did the pendulum. And that's how I it's crazy, but that's how I decided to have brain surgery. The swing of a pendulum. But, I think ultimately it was the right choice for
but
me.
that was the choice of and the choice of knowing as well what tool to use, right?
Yeah.
And people saying that she likes to use pendulum as well. And people saying blessings, Marilyn, yeah. And Lucy also saying that she uses pendulum on important issues.
Yeah. Just knowing how I feel, like how I really, really, really feel. That's when I dig it out. And I don't feel like I can use it for other people because I don't know how they really, really feel, Like it's like I use the pendulum for myself because I think it gets me to what I really think, and you do it with your eyes closed or whatever. So you're not consciously and sometimes it feels like it's moving in the different direction than it is. So it's really kind of weird how the pendulum works, because sometimes I think, oh, it's going in this direction, right? And then when I open my eyes and look at it, it's really going this way, but I can't, because I keep my eyes closed for a few minutes until it's really going in the direction that it's going, and it's kind of uncanny. So I use the pendulum, and like I said, sometimes I roll dice. Sometimes I just roll dice to say, what kind of day will it be today? And then and then I associate the number with sometimes with the trump cards, or sometimes just my understanding of what the number means.
Thank you. Yeah, wonderful. And I did ask you to bring an object object of significance for you, something that's really important to you. Do you mind sharing it with us?
Well, I started, like in an effort to keep it very interesting for myself, I started collecting coins that appear on historic tarot decks. And that's, if you think collecting tarot decks is expensive, try collecting coins from the 1300s, in the 1400s rather, and the 1500s, it gets crazy. But I scored a coin, and I got to, I want to say it perfectly right. I scored a coin from that appears on the Visconti Madrone tarot deck, and it's got and unfortunately it's encased, so you can't probably see. I'll take a picture maybe, and
again I'll just put you a bit closer to show it at the camera. Maybe we'll be able to.
I'm not sure. There's probably glare, but it's of the dragon, like eating the young person. So it's the Visconti. It's the Visconti family emblem. So it was like a coin that appears in the Madrone, the Visconti Madrone tarot deck. It looks like from the dates, it was probably during the time of Galeazzo Maria Sforza, who was the son of Bianca Maria Visconti.
Wow.
And Francesco Sforza, So that's what this coin is. So that was like a really cool thing. When I bought it, it was, when I saw pictures of it, it wasn't in this case, and it was just, they took pictures of it loose. So I was thinking, oh my God, that's so cool. I can't wait to hold this coin in my hand, and imagine that I'm like in the 1440s, or 1460s Italy, when people were actually playing these cards, because I love the idea of being connected to the past, and I love the history, so. And I have a lot of other coins, like, a bunch of coins that aren't encased, some that are on the French decks, but this one particularly really like thrilled me to own. And then I get it, and they have it in this case to prove that it's like a extremely rare and special coin, and like I can't do anything with this stupid thing. And I tried to like pry it open, and people are like, "Are you crazy? You have to keep it in the case because that's the only way you can prove that it's real." So I own it, but I still think it's pretty cool to have because I can see it. And I have other, coins from like 1770 that appear in the French TDM decks, and
that's so amazing. Wow.
Yeah, well, because you do it long enough, you try to find ways to keep it interesting for yourself, and so for me, collecting tarot decks is one way, decks from the history. But then when I started getting objects that, because my tarot decks are just copies, they're not, I don't have any ancient decks, so having coins was a way to really connect with these people who played these cards. So I imagine like when I hold some of these other coins, that I'm actually holding a coin of a person who is actually playing the game of tarot, right, with a deck that matched the coin. So that just like blows. That's like, no wonder I had an aneurysm. My brain's like always going boom. But like
our friends in the chat are loving it. So Jen is saying, "Wow, fabulous," and Kay saying, "Wow, Marilyn, that's fabulous."
Yeah, so I was, so to me, like it's fun to like collect coins from that period of time. So I have a lot of coins. But I guess this one that I mentioned from the Visconti family is like probably like the most expensive or the most rare or the most special. that I have, because it's a coin that people would have held who played the Visconti decks, you know. So it's
From
kind
of yeah. Yes, we've been now for like almost hour and 15 minutes. So I'm going to ask you a last question, I guess, Marilyn. What's the perfect day in your life? Perfect day in Marilyn's life.
I think, well, you know, it would be teaching my grandchildren how to read tarot, you know, being present for them, but just may or may not ever really happen because I don't know. But, you know, like if I'm talking about like something to do today or tomorrow, I think my favorite activities are, you know, it would be a day about talking about parallel universes, you know, and talking about the mysteries of the universe. You know, those are kind of like, I could talk all day, you know, talking to somebody about things like that. And, working, having family in my life and having, you know, solid interpersonal relationships are also like rank really high in ways I like to spend my day. But if I like, as far as conversation goes, I really liked getting lost in the possible like conversations about parallel universes. I've had a couple experiences that are really weird, and so I've taken my husband down a few odd conversations, and my children down a few odd conversations. But they're very interesting for me. So that's kind of how I enjoy talking. Of course, I always like talking about tarot, but I think I like talking more about things that I don't know as much about.
Yeah, well, it makes sense to me because it's always like, as I said, like one of my favorite sayings, like you teach what we need to learn and to discuss something that we want to know more about. Yeah, we had a question here from Cave to you, Marilyn. Do you feel anything psychic with your ancient possessions?
Yeah, I like to think so, like I'll have like moments of like rush, but I have to put myself, it's not that I just casually hold it and then have like this like instant feeling. It's more like maybe I'll hold it for a while and sit there and concentrate, and then maybe I'll have like an experience, with it. But yeah, it makes me actually feel connected. Like I've chopped out 600 years and I'm at a table and I have this coin in my hand and I'm playing with these cards that match the coin, and it's like a real magical thing. And I guess it's kind of like a psychic experience. I mean, I don't necessarily have a vision of a person, I become that person, and I just, and I just imagine, I just imagine who I am in that moment. So I don't necessarily know if it's a real psychic experience. It's just, how I imagine I was, or whoever owned the coin. That's a great question.
Yeah, it is a great question. By the way, we kind of almost finished here. So if your friends have questions to Marilyn, please pose them. But I'll just highlight a couple of comments here from Xante Leaf. The pendulum seems to act like drawing a sacred circle around your important issue, a place to hear your own inner voice.
Yes, exactly.
For sharing this, Marilyn.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Xantha, was that the person's name?
Yeah,
my eyes aren't so good. Yeah. Yeah, my eyes are terrible, and I need glasses, and even then it's hard to see. But yeah, because the pendulum takes away all the distractions that and I think sometimes for me with tarot, for myself, if I'm too close to if I'm too close to the question, I really need something that's a little more objective for me. I mean, I can be objective with the tarot. It's not like I'm not objective, but I think something that is just like, I don't need pictures, for this. I need, like, I just want a yes or no answer, sometimes. And that's how I cut to the chase. You know, I don't pull cards because they could be like, you know, I want yes or no, and the pendulum will do that for me. So, you know, I don't mean to, you know, I love tarot. I mean, if I had to live without one, I'd live without the pendulum, you know, because I love my tarot. But I think the pendulum has been very helpful to me for certain things.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and Sadhana loves the idea of sitting at the kitchen table teaching tarot.
Yes, exactly. So I'm living for that. Like, that's what's keeping me going. You know, it's just like, you know, having the opportunity to sit down with my grandbabies are just babies right now. One's 3 months and one's like 1.5 years almost. You know, but you know, just exposing them to my room, my tarot parlor, and then showing them my collection and my, you know, slow incremental ways, you know, until finally they show an interest and say, and if I'm not alive at that point, I'll have all my videos on YouTube, which is why I created it, right? So I know I have satisfaction that they'll have access to me after I'm gone, and you know, that's my reason.
This image as well, image of sitting and teaching tarot to grandchildren, magical. And that's the comment from Stephen Bright. Fantastic interview. Thank you both so much. I love how you develop your own relationship with cards, individually inspiring. Yeah, thank you, Stephen. All right, so if you don't have any questions, I just want to take a moment to thank you, Marilyn, for your time and for agreeing to come to my channel and to share your experience and how you learn to read the cards and doing a demonstration reading so people can see how you read your cards. So I'm so very grateful, and I'm very grateful to all our viewers as well who participated in the discussion and joined us.
I'm grateful to anybody who's interested, you know, and to you very much for thinking of me and including me, because I do appreciate it most sincerely.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm just as I said, like I'm so very grateful. And of course, your channel will be linked in the description. And in a moment, I will include your Instagram page, maybe where you can post the coins so people can see that dragon.
Okay.
And amazing. How special, hey? Like how often can we see that?
Yeah.
And and I will link your website as well so people can get in touch with you. But so it's the time now to wish everyone a wonderful weekend. And Marilyn and I will see you soon on either of our channels. So namaste, everybody, and have a lovely weekend. And you, Marilyn, you stay for a minute. We'll just have a little chat after. Namaste.
Namaste.
Much love to all of you.
Bye.